You guys, today, as we have been doing all, this month, I am featuring. Go away, Witcher, go away. I am featuring black people in the video game industry. And if you choose the Black History Month command, you'll see who we're featuring today. Today is the 17th, not the 16th, so I don't know why that says the 16th today. It should be February 17th. We're having trouble today. Okay, let me fix that too. Do you guys notice that when you are using a VPN, your Twitch changes don't save? I'm having trouble with Twitch when I'm using a VPN. Anyway, if you use the February 17th command, you'll be able to see our feature today. And our feature today is about accurate representation of Black video game characters and events related to supporting Black game developers in the industry. So I'm gonna start first by showing you guys a character that you might be familiar with from a very large studio. Do you guys remember the game Watch Dogs 2? Well, Watch Dogs 2 is developed by Ubisoft, and it was the second in the trilogy. I have to say, the first game I wasn't interested in at all. I was not, interested in the idea of hacking people, or I didn't care about the main character. By all accounts, he wasn't that interesting to begin with. But when Ubisoft announced that they were going to be making a sequel and that would be starring Marcus Holloway, I was immediately intrigued. This was a Black man in the lead role of a video game, something that I had not seen in I don't know how long. But not only that, this is a character that to me was really well presented and fleshed out. And I'll just read something to you here about the portrayal. First of all, he was played by Ruffin Prentiss. And you might know Ruffin Prentiss by other shows that he's been on. He's been in SEAL Team, Insecure. He's in the Blacklist, Chicago PD. These are all, pretty high-profile TV shows. He was also in Watch Dogs Legion, which is the third game in the series. And there was also another Black NPC named Horatio. And he was played by Michael Xavier. Now, Michael Xavier III, I think his name is. He's a Canadian actor. He's been in other movies as well as the video game. So things like, it looks like he was in Shazam. And what else? Taken? He was in the TV show called Taken. He was in this television series, which I think was also starring the lady who plays the coroner on Murdoch Mysteries. And yeah, he's in a couple of other TV shows. He was in the Book of Negroes, which is the miniseries based on the book. I don't know if you guys have read the Book of Negroes. I've read that, and I saw the TV show. So yeah, the thing I liked about Marcus, I'll read this to you here. Marcus Holloway is portrayed by Ruffin Prentiss through performance capture in Watch Dogs 2. The developers noted that they had a responsibility to ensure Marcus resonates with players as an authentic character as opposed to being a caricature. And I feel that that is very important and something that Ubisoft gets a lot of things wrong. But in this case, I think they got something right. And this is something that I applaud them for. To accomplish this, Ubisoft actively sought out African American script consultants and actors for their involvement with finding the characters' voices and encourage improvised dialogue to make them feel real. So contrast this with dialogue that you've heard for something like Forspoken, for example, which really didn't resonate well with audiences. The developers waited very long before they actually consulted with people like Black Girl Gamers to give the main character a sense of authenticity. The writers that they engaged, Gary Ripa, and I think they even engaged Amy Hennig at the very beginning. For some reason, I know that's, for example, Gary Ripa distanced himself from the game afterwards. He said he didn't have much to do with it. And even when people were shown the game, game journalists were shown the game at the initial PR rounds that the developers were doing, a lot of the people in the room were like, have you made an effort to actually get Black people involved in this game? And they weren't given really good answers. So I think this is where you can see the contrast between an authentic character and somebody where even if the staff wasn't diverse, the developers and the publishers went out of their way to engage people who could bring a more diverse, who could bring their background and bring their input into the writing. So Marcus Holloway, portrayed by Ruffin Prentiss, you'll see here that the Watch Dogs 2 creative director, Jonathan Morin, said the team encouraged the actors to embrace a natural synergy that spontaneously happens during their interactions with each other, noting in particular that the actors who played Marcus and another African-American character named Horatio Carlin, I don't know why they didn't just say his name, Michael Xavier, had a natural way of saying things to each other due to their similar cultural backgrounds. And you can see that they felt comfortable enough to bring themselves, their whole selves to the characters, and that improved the game a lot. So Prentiss said his work experience on the game was positive. In an interview with IGN in October 2020, he praised the game's developers for the opportunity to, quote, play a character in a video game that was brave enough to tackle such tough topics, end quote, as well as their willingness to not only explore issues of racism, but also give him creative freedom to interpret certain scenes from his perspective as a Black man. Prentiss also acknowledged the positive fan reception to the close friendship between Marcus and a fellow team member named Wrench, which was likened to a bromance. According to Prentiss, the writing team for Watch Dogs 2 had considered the idea of implementing crossover storylines featuring characters from other titles like Marcus in an Avengers-like coalition for future work in the Watch Dogs series. Prentiss did not hear from Ubisoft before or shortly after the announcement of the upcoming Bloodline DLC for Watch Dogs Legion, even though Wrench was confirmed to appear, although he did express an interest about reprising the role as it is one of his favorite roles. Prentiss was eventually contacted by Ubisoft late in the development of Bloodline to provide several voice lines, which he was happy to oblige. So you can see there, he had a very positive experience because he was able to bring his whole self to the character, and there was support from the studio to bring those voices into the writing and make this an authentic character. So I thought that was a really interesting character to share today. And I also want to share a couple of events that have been done in the past and are actually coming up in the future as well, to support Black game developers, bring them together, and offer them a place where they can be themselves as well. So I actually attended the Black Game Pros Mixer, which was used to be put on by Ubisoft. I attended that back in 2020, before the pandemic was in full swing, and they've had a couple of events. Not just it was originally hosted by Ubisoft Toronto, but they also had an event in London, I think, once. Unfortunately, I don't think they're having it anymore. I think they did switch it from in-person to online, but during the years like 2020 to 2022 or so, Ubisoft has gone through a lot of upheaval with their very discrimination and sexual harassment and bad actors running rampant in the company. So I haven't seen them since then. I haven't really seen them do this Black Game Pros mixer again. But this is you'll see the link in the chat to the YouTube video where you can see the one that they did a couple of years ago. And hopefully one day they do bring that back. I think that was supported by their employee resource group for Black developers at Ubisoft. So hopefully it can be revived. I'm not sure if they'll ever bring it back. The other thing I want to share today is there's another event called the Game Devs of Color Expo. And this is an event that happens every year to highlight specifically video game developers and video games that are represented by the Black community. And you could actually play the games, you can learn about them, you can meet the developers. This happens online as well. And I think you might have heard of some of the games that have been featured in past events, like Dot's Home, which was this video here in the middle. This video game here in the middle is a mobile game that was built to sort of showcase the inequality in home ownership for Black Americans. And I've actually played part of that game. It's a really interesting game. I think you can play it on Android and on your iPhone, I think. So that's a good game for you guys to try out. You can always check out the next event if you go to their website, and that website is also linked here in the chat. So you'll see what happened at last year's event. You can see the speakers that they had and the sponsors. You can also donate to them to keep putting on these events. Some of the speakers that they've had in the past include, talking about some of the topics they've talked about are like, you have to have unlikable protagonists sometimes, 2D animation, all sorts of interesting topics related to how to hire co-developers, for example. Another thing that they talk about is, health issues. For example, having ADHD. It's not, a lot of the time health concerns are not taken into account for Black people in the same way they are for white people. In fact, a lot of the studies that they do to find out about these health issues, they sort of just use white subjects and not taking into account the fact that certain chemicals or certain drugs or certain issues affect other people's health differently, whether they're South Asian, whether they're Black, whether they're of African descent, and whatever. So there are a lot of interesting topics around gaming, but not just about gaming itself, around culture, around health and stuff like that. So this is a really interesting content. This is an interesting conference that highlights game developers of color, and you can also get a lot of insight from Black game developers at this event as well. All right, so the last event that I want to share with you is happening during the Game Developers Conference in March, and this is the Black Designer's Dilemma, which is a panel that will be they're going to have a panel on Wednesday, March 20th during GDC, and this is happening in San Francisco. I think you have to register for the conference in order to see this event. But basically, this particular event is an interesting one because it talks about the cultural issues in companies that affect Black designers. So they're going to have a talk about they're gonna have a talk to discuss how companies can be more supportive in helping their Black game developers to thrive. So this is an interesting opportunity to, if you know people who are going to go to the Game Developers Conference, this is a really good session that they can join. So yeah, that is those are a few events that in the past and coming up that you can look out for if you're a Black game developer and you're looking for support and events where you can speak to people like you, speak and network and meet people as part of the community. So thanks for listening. If you want to see any of the previous features that we've done for Black History Month in the gaming space, you can type !Feb and the date. So !Feb 16th for yesterday, !Feb 15th, and so on. I guess the first one was on February 13th, so you can't go back